Sassy, can you tell us a little bit about that program?
I mentioned the north side a second ago, and we know we've got to do things differently if we're going to get results. So one of the things we did at Cleveland, first of all, we said we've got to have more time. Not just school folks, but how many days do we go to school in our state, children? 180 days. Okay, and why do we go 180 days? We all know that's what we've always done. Well, we for some of our children, 180 days just isn't enough. So a couple of years ago, we added 5 weeks to our school calendar. So at Cleveland, children go to school for 205 days. They'll get out in June. They'll have the week of the 4th off, and then we're back in school. And they're in school from 8:30 until 1:30. It's 3 hours of literacy, 2 hours of math. That's all we do. And that's been very beneficial. We had to change the culture of the school. So we instituted a model called the Leader in Me, and this is an international model. How many of y'all are familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Well, if it works for a Fortune 500 CEO, guess what? It works for a child as well. So through this model, we're teaching our children how to be proactive, how to think win-win, how to begin with the end in mind, how to synergize and sharpen the saw, and that permeates that school. There are about 2,000 Leader in Me schools internationally, and there are 102 lighthouse schools. And we're so proud back in November, Cleveland became that 102nd lighthouse school through Leader in Me. So that has been a great model for us. And like Greenville, we're a choice district. Parents love the 205 days. Enrollment has gone from 400 kids, we're at 600 kids at that school now, which is too many because we need to keep it small. But that has been very beneficial for us. So, Crystal, since you gave me the floor, sorry, Burke, I wanted to just piggyback on something Burke said. We've got our members, one of our members from the House Education Committee here and Public Works, and of course, Rita Allison, who is in Spartanburg and Melissa's district back there, she chairs that committee. As does the task, she chairs the task force that our House Speaker just put in place to really take a look at what's going on with education in South Carolina. I'm as optimistic about where we are in the state as I've ever been, because I see people coming together. From our General Assembly to our State Superintendent of Education. She's going to be in Charleston tomorrow with our governor. Bill Barnett's going down. They're looking at a public-private partnership with the school there. I think about our State Board of Education. There wasn't a time when we all jived, believe it or not, but our State Board of Education, our Education Oversight Committee, all of these entities now have really come together. And I'm going to tell you what started. The superintendents came together because we were in a dark time, and we said, we've got to do something. And working with our Chamber of Commerce, our state chamber, we said, what is it that we want for education in South Carolina? Truly, is it minimum gap? Is that what we want? And nobody wants that, for this state to be what we know she can be. So we really came together and came up with what we said a graduate in this state needed to be about. And it's called the Profile of a Graduate. And it looks at 3 different things. The skills they need in terms of their academics and the social sciences and the arts. But what about those other things? What about that creativity and communication and collaboration? That's great. Jim Reynolds always said that'll get you a job. But what about this other piece? Do I have that perseverance? Do I have that integrity? Do I have that global perspective? These things will do the job for you. So that little sheet of paper is now driving the work going on in South Carolina, because as a state, we finally have something we can agree on, and that's what we're working towards right now. So I'm very optimistic about where we are.
Okay. I want to ask a question about one-to-one technology. Your school with one-to-one technology, did you dissolve all paperback books and straight digital?
We did not, because our science textbook adoptions, it's not digital. I'd say about 60% of our textbooks are. Our state's working with us now on whether or not we have to take the money and spend it just on textbooks, or can we just spend that on the resources we want? And I think we're getting there as a state right now. But it did not. My parents were just so glad that they could put those 80-pound book bags up. They're about 50 pounds still.
But I think about the changes you can make for looking at the area, you plug that lights up, and next morning it's fixed.
Yeah, it's incredible. This isn't a fad. This isn't keeping up with the Joneses. But if you can see what the technology does, if you can take that math digital textbook is what we call them, and you don't understand something, the matter of clicking on two teachers and they can explain the lesson to you again, where a teacher can record her lesson or his lesson, send it home, you watch it, and then when you come back, now let's get into it. You know, I've got a young lady who appeared on PBS last night, Asia Boyd at Spartanburg High School. She did a little documentary about their dissections in her CP Biology 2 class. And for her to take her MacBook, plug it into the microscope, put that over that worm and the squid and whatever they were doing, and to see her explaining on that recorder what she was doing, that takes dissection to a whole new level. And then to turn that into the teacher, where she could watch all of these different documentaries. How many of you wrote book reports? I hate it. But to tell a kid now, you know, read this book, and then I want you to make a movie trailer for it. Our kids get excited about those things. So it's not a fad. It's not, you know, us trying to keep up. It's really, it creates a totally new dynamic. Y'all are bored to death sitting up here listening to us right now. And our kids get bored to death sitting and listening to teachers. So, and I need to stop saying one-to-one, because really it's 1 to X, because it's changing. Every time you turn around, the devices and technology change.
But what happens when kids take that technology home, because I have internet connection?
Oh, yeah, let me give you some examples of Spartanburg and partnerships. I'm sorry. Next door to Spartanburg High School, there's a church, St. Christopher's Episcopal. We went to our community before we started this. City, housing authority, everybody said, this is where we're going. A lot of kids have access, a lot of kids don't. This particular church, they had 3 offices, one for storage, one for a visiting minister, and I can't remember what the third one was for. They knocked all the walls down, painted it, created the most beautiful space. Barnes and Noble can't compete with it. And they call it the juice bar because of Apple computers, and you can go there and get apple juice. Let the computers in. So they got Wi-Fi there and all these wonderful things, and even provide a staff member there for the kids to have a safe place to go back to school. Mary Black Foundation said, you know what, that's pretty novel. We're going to provide some grants. Anybody in the city of Spartanburg with District 7 that wants to create a juice bar, you can do that. So we've had several other juice bars. One of our African American churches took their parish and said, we're not using this. So they gutted it and they created the most beautiful place. It's called the Powerhouse. And it's being used now not only, and it's on the north side of the hill, it's not only for the children, but it's for the community to come in now and have a place to go. So, you know, you'll find stickers in different places. We talk to everybody from Panera Bread to all these different places to say our children need to have access. And next year, Verizon's doing some wonderful things. Federal government's doing some great things with E-rate funding now, by the way. But it's called Kajit, where we can give kids little access points to take home. Now, we only start with 10 of them. In California, you know, this came out of my trip to D.C., but they've got a distressed area. In Darrell Adamson, they put routers on every last one of their school buses. And what they do now, they take their school buses and they park them in the neighborhoods so kids can have access to technology. So one of these days, I'm gonna have a conversation with our legislators to say, can we not centralize our parking? Because I want to send some of my buses out to some of these places. So where there's a will, there's a way, and but that is the challenge. So having the devices is one thing, but having access is another. So that's a great question.
Rico, you had a question?
Yeah, I could, and I'd like to direct it to you and Dr. Booker if he'll speak on behalf of District 5, maybe. How about that? So, City of Greer is located in 2 counties, partially in Spartanburg County, partially in Greenville County. And we're blessed. We've got 2 great school systems on both sides. One of the things that we've come to understand is that only second behind the cost of the new home is probably where the children are going to go to school. Second or third factor in buying a new home. So we're blessed that we can tell them anywhere in the city they're going to have a good school system. We typically add something like 1,000 to 1,200 new residents a year. We've got currently 1,800 new homes that are developing in the city. We're adding 300 to 500 students a year to the respective school districts. How can y'all help us plan that growth, because inevitably it's kind of the chicken and the egg, because we either see the growth going to where a new school is going to be built or reactive to where the schools are. And I know, at least on the Greenville County side, we are getting to the max in terms of the north side, east side area, in terms of how we're going to handle that influx of new students in District 5. I know it's building some new schools in an area where they know that there's going to be a lot. I know planning's planning, but in Spartanburg County there are 7 districts, whereas in Greenville County we've got 1. How can the city of Greer better plan to help accommodate the growth that we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of working with the school district?
I think the key for us is simply to work more closely with you. You know, we do some things together now. Generally speaking, our planning department staff and your planners in the city, including the county and the other municipalities, we do, and I'm sure other districts do similar to that, do this. We have a 10 to 12 year long range facility plan that we hope addresses all the growth that we're going to have within the county. We cover, when I say the county, we're actually a little bit unique, although there are other districts that are similar. The boundaries of Greenville County schools is not contiguous to Greenville County. We take in some of Spartanburg County, some of Lawrence County, and some of Anderson County. In fact, we actually have a building in Greer that's in Spartanburg County, but it is in Greenville County school territory, if you will. We cover 862 square miles, and we have varying degrees of growth. And actually, your area represents a real dichotomy of growth, because we've got one school sitting there with a tremendous number of empty seats in one part of the Greer area, and in the higher growth, more southern part of the Greer area, we've got some challenges with keeping up. Now, we're doing okay right now. We don't have any portables in service at those locations. But as the economy continues to improve, we know that we're going to have some issues there. And I think the more we can do in conjunction with the municipalities and with the county, as we build that plan that we revise every year. It's a 10 or 12 year plan, but we revise it every year. I think to seek out more opportunities to spend more time between the staffs of both the cities, all the cities. We have 6 municipalities in the county, and the county itself, to spend more time together sharing information, which we do, but we probably could still continue to do more of that. And the part of that, and we actually were having a discussion with some folks in the city of Greenville earlier this week, a very similar question came up. And the thing that we don't always know when it's the 2 planning staffs working together or talking is what development is on the horizon that they may not be aware of. And I think that's a key area where maybe a closer communication between our more senior administration and maybe your city managers, that might greatly enhance what we do. And I don't know if you want to speak for Scott. I'll be sure to accurately
Well,
report.
let's see this on 5. Misrepresent,
I'll call you out on it.
call me out. I won't even speak to Spartanburg 5. I'm a product of 5, and I can remember when 290 was a little one-lane road. But I can talk about a previous district I worked in, and that was in York School District 1 in York County. And the thing that was so different there than what I found here, and a lot of this I think had to do with Fort Mill being in the county, in the bedroom of Charlottetown. Every time there was a housing project on the horizon, we came together. And there were specific rules in place about what happened in that meeting. And the districts and the planning commission, we all had to kind of come to grips as to whether or not this was a good time and a good place for that to happen. And I'm sure over there they could share what those memorandums look like and all of that, but I don't have those conversations often. Now, I'm in the city, 50 square miles. I love some housing to come my way, but that is a challenge, and I think there's some things that districts and municipalities, planning commissions can do to at least let everybody know. 500 homes, I've got a school that's already at capacity. What can we do to mitigate some of this? And that's what we did in York County all the time.
And there's one thing already underway. I don't know if you may not have yet gotten the invitation to it. Our board is inviting you and elected municipal and county. You already got one of those to come and kind of hear a presentation about our long-range facility plan, but to have some discussion around it. And that's something different that we have not done before.
What about, we talked a little bit about where shows are not having funds. What about the funding, the formula right now? You guys haven't talked about that. I know I know that's the big elephant in the room probably. And if it does change, how does it affect future plans that you've already got in place? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, one thing, and I'd echo something I believe that Russell said earlier. I think when I think back over my time in education, there was probably a time in the early 80s when things were aligned similarly to the way they are now. But that's the way.
Baby.
Yeah. You were in third grade. The early 80s, the EIA, I all remember Governor Riley that provided leadership for the EIA, the Penny for Education. And there was a time in there, and everybody seemed to be on the same page. The legislature, the governor, state superintendents, the board of education, local school boards and superintendents. Not until this year have I sensed that same agreement, that same commitment, that same level of partnership. Last year, the base student cost, you all certainly don't want to lesson in school finance this afternoon because it is one, not very entertaining, and two, unnecessarily complicated. But the basic funding foundation for schools in South Carolina is the Education Finance Act. And it has a formula in it. And that formula really tells you how much money should be added every year to address providing a, hopefully more than a minimal program, but really based on a minimal program. We have not hit the formula-driven allocation in years. We are currently being funded at about the 2005 level. Now, everybody knows what happened in 2009-10. So when the economy goes down, there are negative repercussions for all of us. Last year, we got a $19 per student increase in the base student cost. Quite honestly, a lot of it was by money being taken from one place we were receiving it and sent to us at another. At the end of the day, we got about this much more money. That is not true this year. The base student cost in both the House version and now the Senate version, as I understand it coming out today, is about $100 per student. Now there's a formula for that, like there is for everything else. So when you hear us say $100 a student, in Greenville County we get 68 of those dollars. Russell gets some amount, they get some amount, Andy gets some amount. It's be probably different for all four of us. And those of you sitting out here that represent other districts get a varying amount. So we're not getting the whole $100. And about this much of that is that same thing of we used to get it in this pile or this allocation, now we're getting it over here. So it's not really new money. And if you took it from a formula where we got $1 for every dollar and you put it in one, we get 68 cents, you can see that kind of erodes the increase a little bit. But it is a very significant increase compared to what we have received in the previous several years. And we understand there are other great demands on the state budget. We also understand, and I think everybody at the state level is saying it, how important education is to the future of our state. How important it is to economic development and vitality. So I think there is a renewed commitment. But you've heard it said in here this afternoon, all these things we do, whether it's that access point up there, or if you go back to something I said to you at the outset, the most important thing, and every one of the people sitting up here have said this in a different way, the most important thing is the teacher in the classroom, that quality teacher, and a quality principal in the building. You've got to compensate those people. Well, no one went into it to get rich, but they need a livable, competitive wage for what they do. And as we grow and have to add more, that's an increased cost. And we're, quite frankly, we're capped at what we can do locally. You know, we have boards that make a commitment, step out and do occasionally have to increase taxes. But we're in a business where 90% of our costs are the people who do the work. So every year, 90% of what we spend goes directly to the people who do the work. People who do the work in the classroom, and all those people it takes behind that teacher.
You're just poor mouth.
But
Since 1970, the cost of education has gone up, and your achievement, hadn't kept pace, even taking inflation into account. I hear that all the time. But no one ever goes back and says, let's look at what schools are required to do since 1970. Let's look at what programs are in place since 1970. And it is incredible. Now, you mentioned some positives, you got another point.
yeah, because, well, I want to get, while you're talking about the good old days, I want to get one thing that I always remind people about the good old days. The good old days were not that good. If for no other reason, we talk about graduation rate. Chuck said in his opening comments, he said something about correcting an incorrect graduation rate. Graduation rate, ours is now over 80% in our district. Statewide is 70-something%.
78%, and I think we hit 80 every state this year. We hit 80%. It is around 35th in the nation right now. It has climbed for 4 consecutive years.
Well, let's go back about 4 years, because it was about 70% 4 years ago. You know what it was in 1970, in the good old days? Flip the number. Flip the number. It was about 30%. And they did not do near as good a job of tracking it. You go back to the 60s, it was less than that. When you look at the students that entered school and left, and they left all along the way. There was a period of time we had no compulsory attendance in school. There was no law that required you to be in school. Now you can leave. You can't leave until you turn until you go past 16, 17, but really after you're 16. There have been years where there was no compulsory attendance. People quit in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. They left school. Yeah, some of them got gainful employment. That kind of employment doesn't exist anymore.
I'm in Burke to take over. To our state's credit, we put a poverty index in a couple of years ago, so we're grateful for that. And Mr. Mayor, what I would say also, if we were to get in our cars and go sit to the back of the room in the lower part of the state, the PD, it's a different conversation from here. And we all care about every child in South Carolina. So we're going to have to do some things differently to infuse resources into those areas that have to happen. I don't think it's fair to say, you know what, they've got a school in Greenville named after a former superintendent, and it's beautiful, and y'all spending too much money. We don't need that. We need to make sure we've got this everywhere in the state of South Carolina. And so often I hear about the Upstate and what we've got in many places. Like we shouldn't have it because the lower state doesn't have it. We need to have those same resources for everybody. So that's the conversation. And I don't envy Rita Allison serving as the chair of that task force, but that's the conversation that we all need to be concerned about in South Carolina. Because if our state isn't strong across the board, none of us are strong.
First, I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, and then especially to our panelists. I hope everybody has felt the passion of this conversation. The one we had in February was very similar, and it is really, I think, a testament to the education here in the Upstate, and as we've been saying, growing in South Carolina. It's great strength. I grew up in a very rural district in Southern Virginia that has probably about the same number of students that Fay School does. And if it wasn't for the fact that education was seen as important there, I wouldn't be here, and others probably from similar would not as well. And my question very quickly to you all is, one thing, while technology and all these other things are crucial, and jobs and trying to make sure that all students have the ability to reach their human potential is what we all want. But there are some things that have not changed from past generations, or should not have changed. One, I think, is about making sure that students, respect each other, respect their teachers, and respect the idea of education holistically. And Fay, you mentioned it a little bit very early about soft skills and that, but I'd like to, if we could very quickly, just kind of turn the conversation back to that, of how and I think the programs, Russell, you talked about, are really doing some of that in your district. But what are some strategic things that you guys are doing around making sure that the students are not just technology-wise, advanced and going to be prepared, but also prepared in other ways for not just school and work, but also for being great citizens and being an important component of our future in the Upstate?
Well, we have organized character-based lessons through our guidance program and throughout the schools, so students are exposed to, kind of words, integrity, perseverance, those kinds of things. They learn the word, use the word, just are made aware of what it means and so forth. So, there's certainly lessons that are taught, but, as far as expectations in our schools, as far as expectations for being on time, for being industrious, those expectations are there. And I think it's just the culture that we establish, and it needs to be an essential part of every school culture to have those expectations, and so that they walk the walk throughout school, and then when they get into the work world, it's there.
Our Education Oversight Committee, they've adopted the profile of the South Carolina graduate that I spoke of, as have a number of other groups. The report cards that we get every year in November, the ratings have been suspended for 2 years. We're getting 2 report cards, it's confusing everybody, so now we're coming up with one that makes sense, and I hope we get it right. But you will still get a report card this year. And on that report card, there is a piece of it that's going to ask specifically, what are you doing to ensure your children have those things you just talked about? So the first thing is, it's got to be important to everybody, and everybody has to understand why this is critical. And that conversation is taking place right now. As you look at our districts, you have things in place like Leader in Me. It teaches that. That's the purpose. You have IB schools out there. That's what it teaches. You have First Tee program. We got a First Tee program in every school in our school district now. Not to teach kids how to play golf, but to teach them those 9 core principles of what you can learn on a golf course. We've got Montessori programs, so we're instituting those programs for that reason. I'll give you one specific thing though. At Cleveland Academy, to tell a child you need to be proactive is great. What does that mean? It means you're in charge of yourself. Well, that's great too. My children aren't proactive. My children don't always synergize. So how can we teach children these skills? How can you teach a child resilience? How can you teach a child how to fall down and keep getting back up? So we're partnering right now with a group out of California. It's called Hope Lab. And Pam Amador, she and her husband, they were the ones who founded eBay. And when they sold eBay, they created Hope Lab. And their research was grounded in working with children of cancer and helping these children remain hopeful and optimistic and have their resilience and their grit. So they've chosen to work with 2 schools in South Carolina now. Cleveland is one of them, and there's a school in Orangeburg 5 where St. Wilson is. And as I go in and watch how they're teaching our teachers and our assistants how to teach our children these skills, it's an amazing thing. So, to talk about the soft skills, which I hate that term, to talk about the non-cognitive, which I hate that term because these are cognitive skills that you have to have. We also refer to it as teaching our kids agency, where you are truly an agent of your own self. There's some things out there that I think the state's going to start paying attention to. The other thing we did this year in my district, Gallup does a survey every year, and it's for hope, engagement, and well-being. And the kids take this survey, and it asks these kids 20 specific questions about how they feel about certain things. So we've partnered with Gallup now. We're having some great conversations with our community as a result of that Gallup survey. And our state is now encouraging every school district to give it next year. It's free. But you've got to have the technology to give it.
We do a similar character carnival thing. We just had Rotary and participated in a character carnival. Chick-fil-A sponsors them, and we do all of that kind of thing. In the area that we really need with public schools, though, and making a difference is getting more parent involvement. And it's been, since I started or was in school, I'm sure, a major problem. The parents you need to see don't come. And the children who are struggling are in homes where the parents don't come. And you get some of the, I think y'all are getting, you referenced a preschool program and modeled after Meeting Street Academy in Charleston.
I didn't say the name.
I know my daughter's teaching Meeting Street, one of them, and it was there last week visiting. But in their programs, and they can be more selective, the parents have to come in and participate. For your child to attend our school, we can't say that all the time, but they have to sign off on their child's reading every night, or that they read with them. They might stand on the corner and deal during the day, but they will have to be at that school, and they have the extended day like y'all do too.
And two teachers in every classroom.
Yes, 2 teachers in every. My daughter was 1 or 2 kindergarten teachers for 20 kids down there when they started. And, but they can't fund it on our budget that we get per pupil allocation either. We can't do that. But if you can get those in there, that's where we're going to make a difference, and we can make it one child at a time and turn this around. You know, the generational problems that we've had. But we've got to figure out a way to demand parents step up and come into the school system and be there.
You know, one thing you mentioned in your response, Andy, that I think it's always important for us to remember, not that it's an excuse, but it's a challenge. We take everybody. A lot of times you'll hear about these special opportunities. One huge factor in student success is that parent involvement, engagement, and the fact the student wants to be there. So that creates a very unique population, so you have to be real careful translating the results from that unique population and applying it in general terms. Now that can't be an excuse for us, because we do what we do because I believe we're called to do that. But we are unique in the world. We take everybody. I think the other thing I'd say in answer to your specific question, Dean, I would point to 3 things that you have seen or can see this afternoon. Talk about those skills, those attributes that you want to acquire besides just the cognitive or academic. You walk through this building and you look in the classrooms and you see the way they're set up, and had you walked through while they were still in the instructional day, you'd see project-based, you'd see teamwork, you'd see students leading the class, leading the discussion. You would see those skills being developed in pursuit of academics. You look right out that window, you see one of the least expensive, at-risk graduation enhancement and dropout prevention programs there is. There are 2 athletic fields out there. You look right across this building, that wing, you'll see there's a band room, a strings room, choral room. Those kinds of programs not only engage students and cause them to perform better academically, and there's all kind of research that shows that, it teaches self-discipline. It teaches perseverance. It teaches teamwork. It teaches the access to those programs and those opportunities teach all those things. You saw a great example at the outset of this meeting, that ROTC group from Liberty High School in Pickens County that came in here and presented the color. They teach those same skills and give opportunities to practice them in leadership in general. So I think all those things that we do go to develop that, both within the walls of the classroom and outside.
Well, Burke, thank you, and panel, great answers.
Thank you, Burke, for being part of this town. Burke is a fellow Andersonian like myself. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, John.
I did want to say a couple of things in regard to economic development, what we've heard today. There's no doubt that there's a huge connection between economic development and what is going on in education in K-12. If you think about it pretty simply, you know, the workforce is going to be in place in 10, 15, 20 years, or in the schools right now. And a couple of points that were made just real quickly that I heard today that are so important are the technology in the schools, which is so key. You got to have the same type technology in the schools that the kids are going to go out and start using in the workplace. You have to keep up with that. So, I mean, I'm just so impressed with what's in here. It's just incredible. When we see prospects that come in to look at the Upstate, probably 9 times out of 10, they're going to ask questions about the workforce and the connection between how are we going to get our workers? Are there existing people that can we get? Where's your pipeline? So we have to answer that question of the pipeline. And I think we have a great answer to that question in the Upstate because we have the schools, we have for example, in Anderson, Oconee, and Pickens, there's the showcase event that brings together the 8th graders to talk to manufacturers and to see what's out there in the job market each year. Some of the other counties are doing the similar thing. I think Greenwood's doing something. I think Greenwood does something like that. I think there's a lot of our counties, Cherokee's doing something like that this year. It's just very important to start exposing those kids. And then you have to have a good career center program that gets the kids interested in the manufacturing careers and the STEM careers. And then the technical college. I worked at Tri-County Tech for 8 years, and I know the importance of getting the kids into those programs so then they can get prepared for the workforce. And then you have what's going on at the universities, preparing for the engineering programs for the bachelor's, master's, or PhD level. And it's just, it all comes together with this pipeline. There's nothing more important to what we do with economic development than what's going on right here. Real quickly, again, thanks, Burke, for being here today. Thanks to our panelists. You did a great job, very interesting, very timely. Thanks to Dean for putting all this together and his staff who are right back there, Tiffany and Ashley.